Well, hi everyone. Welcome to Verifiably Random, Season 2, Episode 3. I'm Marc.
Hi everyone, I'm Min.
And hey, I'm John.
Well, good to see you guys. It's been a while.
Yes,
a lot of things have happened in the meantime.
Yeah, it's been busy. And I think most importantly, I put on my Christmas lights, as you can see. So that's pretty important.
Wonderful, wonderful. But that's what happens after Thanksgiving, right? You have Thanksgiving and then immediately you switch to Christmas mode.
Well, you see, like maybe in California where Min is, right? It's super hot. Over here, it's like raining, there's snow. So it's very wintry. I'm ready for it.
In California, you forget that it's even Christmas because there's no sign of Christmas, until these Christmas lights go on. So I'm glad someone's being festive.
So besides Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up, what else has been going on in the crypto world? So what has caught your attention?
For me, I'll start with just one thing, which is the Google Willow announcement, which I think is really interesting. And we discussed this, as Min pointed out, I think in our sister episode in season 1, episode 3, where we talked a little bit about post-quantum and how that works. So you can go back and watch that. Maybe I'm sure a link will be in the description down below. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you. Try my best. A lot of people have taken this a little bit out of proportion. I still think it's a significant breakthrough.
What did they announce, John?
So they announced a process for fabricating or creating a new type of quantum chip. Now, what's interesting is a lot of people came out and they're saying, well, this kind of breaks cryptography and it's scary and we're in a new era. Google haven't created a quantum computer yet that is threatening to modern cryptography, like the crypto that's used in Algorand. But there has been a significant breakthrough on their side with this Willow thing. Essentially, we've spoken before about how you need a quantum computer with a large number of qubits, error-correcting qubits, like ones that are coherent and they don't fall over too easily. And it turns out, in order to build these logical qubits, as they're known, or error-correcting qubits, you need to employ a large number of physical qubits. And so what Google's innovation is that traditionally, the more physical qubits you add, trying to get more logical qubits so that you can indeed create a threatening quantum computer and do some useful attacking. Usually, the quantum computer not only stays in a state of coherence, as we call it, for a very short amount of time, so it can only do computations for a short amount of time, but it also becomes less and less stable. And so this has really stopped people taking quantum computers to the next level. What Willow's major achievement is that as they add more and more physical qubits, again, to build up the number of logical qubits to thousands so that they can mount a useful attack on cryptography or do a useful amount of work, they've managed to come up with a design that not only stays stable and in coherence without, as they call it, decoherence, for 5 times longer period than has happened before, but critically, and this is the most important thing that I took away from it, as they add more physical qubits, they don't see the same level of instability grow. Instead, as they add more qubits, the system stays stable. So what does this mean? It doesn't mean it's easy to make these things. It doesn't mean it's easy to glue 1,000 of them together to do something useful work. But what it does mean is, for the first time, we've shown, hey, maybe it's possible to build these things from little bricks that are, as you add more of them, it doesn't get wobbly. And so that's a pretty incredible breakthrough. I still think it'll be 5, 7, 10 years before we have, I would say, production grade systems that threaten us, but it's a pretty significant breakthrough.
But we are fairly ready for this, right, John? We are fairly ready in terms of like being able to be quantum secure. At least our ledger already is completely quantum secure. So any transaction that's recorded on the ledger, is immutable and will stay immutable even if these quantum computers come online, right?
Yeah, you're quite right, Marc. So our ledger, the history of all the transactions on the chain, the billions of transactions that are in the Algorand blockchain, they are secured by the post-quantum signature scheme that's NIST and soon to be FIPS approved, known as Falcon, which employs it actually stands for Fast Fourier Lattice-Based Signatures over N-true, but essentially what it uses is mind-bending structures of hypercubes in space in order to deliver a crypto system. And so, yes, this ensures that the history of all transactions on Algorand is secure against any quantum attack that may be coming 10 years down the line. But we still have some work to do, of course. I think we're pioneers in this space, as I look around, all of the blockchains that I admire, none of them have really tackled what we've tackled by ensuring that the ledger is protected. But we can't just rest there. Quantum is a dangerous thing, and we need to make sure that our accounts, so the private keys and public keys, are also secure. And then finally, some of the magic that gives Algorand its instant finality that everyone, of course, speaks about. The VRF, the Verifiable Random function, actually the namesake, I guess, of this podcast. We need to move that technology to a quantum proof algorithm, and so that is work that's yet to be done. But hopefully, we'll be approaching that over the next year or two.
Wonderful, wonderful. So besides that, what else? What else has been going on? I think, of course, there's been the elections, and there's a new incoming administration. And there's been some interesting changes there too, right? Some interesting appointments that were made notably at the SEC. And also there's been a new crypto czar appointed.
Yes, from our very Silicon Valley sort of background, right? So David Sachs, who kind of came through the ranks as part of like the PayPal quote unquote mafia, and has done a ton of work with startups, et cetera. It's going to be the new crypto and AI czar, another very exciting area. I guess I don't have much background in sort of regulations or policy, but it does feel like there's a ton of excitement and a lot of hope for conversation to be had together, collectively as an industry about how to move things forward. I think the U.S. has been left out in many ways of the conversation. There's been, I will say, even just talking to projects that are building in Algorand, there's uncertainty if you're based in the U.S. what you can and cannot do because of the sort of all the regulatory and legal risks that may or may not arise. That just the lack of clarity. So I do think that for our projects, it's going to be really great as we get more clarity from the SEC and from the regulators around how to approach it.
That's what I'm actually most excited about. Is just unleashing the innovation of and the creativity of entrepreneurs in the US, and so they don't have to move outside the US anymore to start crypto businesses. They can do it in the US with a regulatory framework that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's massive. I think that's a really interesting kind of potential.
100%. And more than that, also, one, they don't have to move. They can sort of, ideally, if there's a framework that they can work within and that's clear to them. And then two, it'll, what we've seen projects do is in order to understand what their regulatory risks are in the US, they have to pay a lot of legal fees and a lot of entity setup structuring. So all that sort of additional administrative costs hopefully will go down so the projects can focus on building, and innovating and launching the products. So I think that's the other element too, is that the cost to the projects hopefully will reduce.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, maybe let's switch to the main topic of today's episode. And so today we're going to talk about impact and financial inclusion, which I think is a super, super exciting project that I know all of us kind of feel very, very passionate about. So let's talk about that. Why is impact? Why do you guys think impact is important in the context of a blockchain?
Actually, can I say, should we define impact? What do we mean by impact? Sustainability and impact. I think the way that I think about it is we or at least I think at the foundation, we kind of group sustainability and impact together. And impact isn't, but I think impact is more sort of a category of products and projects and solutions that are servicing a certain group of initiatives. How do you guys think about impact? Sometimes we just think about it as nonprofit, but it's not just nonprofit.
Yeah, for me, I've never worked in it, so I might be way off base. But when I hear the word, what I hear is helping people or building technology that makes lives easier or supports those in need. That's kind of what I would think about it. I think so. From what I've seen in the news, things that we're doing on Algorand and discussions internally. I mean, Hassab Pay is a great example. I think UNDP is a great example. There's lots of, I think, wonderful examples that maybe we could discuss. But I think it's important. I think if you think of it this way, a lot of people, a lot of ideologues, maybe if that's the right word, people who are very ideological about causes and about making sure certain things in the world are righted. A lot of those folks got into blockchain because they felt it was a new way to bring, in some ways, more equity or more equality, maybe is a better word, to people globally. And so it doesn't surprise me that a lot of blockchains focus on this. I think we do it very well, though. I think we have a good team built around impact.
Yeah, and I think to me, what's interesting is like one of the basic fundamental kind of characteristics of a blockchain around censorship resistance and like property ownership, right? In the context of like a developed economy like the US, you sometimes wonder like, well, is it that relevant? The financial system is working pretty well. Of course, can always be better, but it's working pretty well. There is a certain amount of freedom. And so like, do you need these characteristics? But I think once you start going outside the United States and outside the Western economies, these things become a lot more relevant, right? They're becoming like sometimes life and death type of issues. And so that's where like really blockchain technologies, in my view, can really shine in kind of bringing these kind of attributes to countries where that don't have the same kind of a Western kind of structures that we are accustomed to and that we're used to.
Yeah, I think totally. And I sort of think of it also from an accessibility point of view, right? Like a lot of times we think about impact and we think about how do we reach people that we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach, but also how do we give them access to a system like, and as I'm thinking about financial access, right? Or I'm thinking about a sort of just ability to like, I guess maybe financial is a really good example. And it's the most relevant one with Hassab Pay, for example. But like, how do we give them access to a system that they wouldn't otherwise have access to? I think is such a critical part of what the work that we can potentially do here as well.
Yeah, I think there's more people in the world that don't have access to proper financial services than do. You forget it, I suppose, when you live in the West, or you live in one of the countries that has it, like Switzerland or the UK or the US. And so, yeah, it's easy to kind of just take it for granted, I suppose. Even in Ireland, we have like one bank and it's shit. And we have like two telcos, maybe we could do it a bit of impact over here, actually. But no, jokes aside, of course, there are places in the world where people literally don't have access to a simple bank account, or indeed, services that they can trust. So,
and it goes beyond banking, right? Like identity, like IDs. Like I read a study recently that says that 850 million people in the world don't have access to any form of ID. That's just crazy, right? That means these people, are locked out of like the financial system. They're locked out of education. Hard to find a job. Hard to get training. Like there's be hard to get access to healthcare. Like there's like so many things you take an ID for granted, but it's not the case necessarily all over the world. Well, maybe we should actually get our head of impact. We should get a specialist in here and like talk about all the initiatives that we're doing. So, John, I think you really wanted to introduce him, right?
Absolutely. What? I mean, after the wonderful job he did at introducing me into Cypher. Okay, here goes. Okay. Next up, we have a charismatic force in global impact, a caring, funny, and relentlessly dedicated guy. When he's not transforming lives, he's helping communities thrive. Our man in impact, Matt Keller, over to you.
That was Jeff. That was outstanding. Thank you. Thanks, John.
So Matt,
Hello,
so why does the foundation have a director of impact?
Well, I mean, I think it's in our DNA for sure. I think, given where Stacy comes from, her background, thinking for a long time about financial inclusion and understanding the role that technology can play in impact. It's just kind of part of who we are. And you look at what is being done in India, you look at what's being done on the impact team. That makes us, I think, very different from lots of other folks. And the benefit to not only kind of the people that we like to serve is that, we produce projects that are really valuable to folks. These are real world experiences that people have, real world assets that people can really kind of touch and feel. So I think it's really important to the life of Algorand, and should be important to the life of other layer ones.
And how would you describe kind of overall, if you look at impact and financial inclusion, how would you describe like what the goals of those initiatives would
I
be?
mean, I think in a broad sense, it's technology advancing the cause of human dignity is how I look at it. Technology in general, or not in general, technology is morally neutral. The question is, what do you do with that technology? Do you use it for ill or do you use it for good? And what's your frame of reference? What's the framework? And my framework is that very, very simple sentence, which is that, is this technology advancing the cause of human dignity in all of its forms and all of its meanings? And so if you look at some of the challenges that we face in the world, particularly for the most marginalized, can this technology help advance the cause of access to those financial institutions and instruments that we all take for granted? Can it advance the cause of access to primary education, which we all take for granted? Can it advance the cause of building a more just and sustainable world? And when you look at, you know, the technology as it is, the answer to those questions is yes, we can. We can do that. And we are doing that.
It struck me like when we recorded the video with Hisape in Afghanistan, and like one of the key points that Nigel was making in the video was that doing this humanitarian cash-based assistance is really promoting really a much more dignified way, yet to the point that you're making, right? Like promoting dignity. And that was, he felt that was one of the core elements of like Hisape kind of works, and the relationship that Hisape is building with these families in Afghanistan and providing financial aid to them. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah,
About
it is. It's
Hisape is one of the core projects, one of the really, really big projects that
yeah,
are.
it was the first project that I kind of, when I first started in April of 22, I think Nigel and I began talking maybe a week later. And then that's led to this, what I think is this kind of the shining star in our ecosystem. And that dignity, it's a really important word. So London School of Economics did a study on Sape and what happens when 2,500 women whom they followed have access to the Sape platform, and what do they do? And so what happens generally in places like Afghanistan and Syria and elsewhere, where institutions are distressed, infrastructure is distressed, is that multilateral agencies like the UN come in and they give out cash. And there are these cash events where people circle these big queues and they wait in line, they sleep for 20 minutes, like they're in line for 24 hours to 48 hours. And so what LSE found was that when women specifically receive that assistance on their phones, or in Sape's case, sometimes they get QR codes or cards they would present, a couple of things happen. One is that they spent more money on the needs of their family. So the children in those households were less hungry, that there was less violence, that there was less corruption. And so women could take that instead of taking bundles of cash, and who were then kind of policed by others on how they could spend it, or maybe that money was taken. They could do with it what they chose to do with it, which was generally go to merchants and buy food and clothing that benefited their household. So it is and I don't like to use the word transformational because it's just so overused. And I spent a lot of time listening to people talk about the transformational effects of technology, which a lot of it's just not true. But in this case, blockchain has the potential to transform how the most marginalized people on earth receive resources, benefits, cash, in order to kind of choose what they do with it to make their lives better. That, if we can do that, and I think we're leading the way on that, Algorand is leading the way, and I can talk about that a little bit. But if we can do that, that alone is a big deal.
So the other thing that struck me with the video is that and we talk about the Hisape in the context of humanitarian aid, but Hisape as a company is actually more than that, right? It's not just about providing humanitarian, it's very important to provide humanitarian aid, but it's more than that because it's becoming the M-Pesa of Afghanistan, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's an electronic, it's a digital cash system. And what's so interesting to me about this is that given the banking infrastructure that exists in Afghanistan or that doesn't exist, only like I think it's like 5 to 6% of people in Afghanistan are banked. And so what Hisape is doing is kind of leapfrogging over traditional banking, going straight to blockchain-based kind of financial services. And and to me, that's terrific. That's when we talk about like real world scale, that's real world scale in Afghanistan, right?
It is. Yeah. I think a huge percentage of the population pays their electric bills. They buy airtime. They do all the things that, M-Pesa is a perfect analog, right? That folks in East Africa have done. And that's innovation that started in that part of the world. And Afghanistan is really showing what can be done with those kinds of platforms. And it's being adopted more and more by people on the ground to do those, what we consider relatively mundane things. You pay your
Yeah.
bills. And Hisape is being used for that, in addition to the UN assistance that goes through that wallet.
And what's also very cool to me is that, and people think about blockchain as like very difficult to use, and there's like you have seed phrases and you have to write them down, and like none of that, of course, happens there because it's all kind of abstracted away, right? So like Hisape
Right.
is removing all the complexities. So if you're, an Afghan person, you don't need to. You have a wallet, but the wallet is completely like hidden from you. All the technical details are hidden from
Yeah.
you, right?
Which is what we want. We want that
Yeah.
that ease of use, and we want that in everywhere, right? And I remember I did a lot of work in Afghanistan in 2010, 2011, 2012. And I was working on literacy and education, and it was with a project at the MIT Media Lab called One Laptop Per Child. And I remember being with folks at the Department of Education, and then at the U.S. Armed Services headquarters in the Green Zone there, and talked about 100% illiteracy among Afghan forces. 100% illiteracy. This is reading illiteracy, not digital literacy, but combined with digital literacy. So you start off with a population that has a really hard time to begin with. And so the fact that this is broken through so quickly and at such scale is testament to that ease of use, Mark. It's not just ease of use for me and you, but it's ease of use for a lot of folks, who can't read, and
Yeah.
who have struggles would struggle perhaps with digital literacy as well. So I think that's a big deal, and that's what we want to see everywhere. That ease of use. I don't know what's in the back end. I don't care, but it's good for me. I'm using it and I'm benefiting from it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Matt, I think the other thing that you touched about on dignity, which I think is such a beautiful and the apt word to use for all the projects that are kind of making change for people. You talked about access, which is another aspect of what we think blockchain can bring. I think the other piece that historically isn't associated with sort of impact projects or nonprofit projects, sustainability projects, is transparency, which I think is something that, you guys on the impact team are really looking to bring into this aid and into kind of how even, Hisape and other projects are leveraging the blockchain, right? Like, I mean, just on Hisape alone, they have 500,000 users on a monthly basis. They're doing millions of transactions. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacts like Hisape and other projects that you guys are working with on the impact side?
Yeah, the transparency piece is huge, particularly from a donor's perspective, right? So much of what folks do in places where there's that kind of level of distress can be somewhat opaque, and things are stolen, money is gone, corruption flourishes sometimes, and sometimes oftentimes in places where aid flows. So what we want to do, and in fact, we started last year something called the Humanitarian Payments Council. We brought together all these different groups, from WorldPay to the United Nations World Food Program to UNDP, to experts in compliance. And one of the things that came up again and again was like, how do you make this more? How do you let more people know about the transparency that's inherent on blockchain-based systems. And so we formed this council in a way to serve as a global advocacy group around that very issue of, hey, World Bank, hey, government X, this can be truly transparent, right? And so to that end, we've done that. We're building something called an aid transparency portal, which we're going to show folks that, hey, this is what happens when you send money to, to Syria or Afghanistan or Yemen or Iraq or Libya, and here's where it's dispersed. And at some point, and you don't want to get kind of too granular, but you can show how it's used and kind of where it's used, right? And so what are the benefits that come out of that? And that's going to lead to some profound changes in how aid is transferred and how aid programs are structured. And just one more thing, man, if you look at the trajectory of cash assistance in the world, when I was with the United Nations World Food Program, there was some, but most of it was in kind. So you'd ship in food from Norway to feed kids in Tanzania, and lots of in-kind donations would come in from around the world. And that began to change over time as cash would replace those in-kind contributions. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One is that it's more efficient. Two, back to that word, the words dignity and agency, people who can spend their own money on things that they see they need to spend it on have an agency that they didn't have before. And three, it stimulates local economies. So you've seen this trajectory go like this, right? It's that kind of hockey stick curve that's happening. In 5 years, you're going to be looking at, tens of billions of dollars, roughly 50 billions of dollars of aid going directly into the hands of people. And we are at the forefront of getting people to recognize that blockchain is a way to help do that. So I think it's really exciting because we've taken the lead on that through SABPay, through the Humanitarian Payments Council, through our relationships with WFP, this blockchain academy that we've developed for UNDP. We are out there evangelizing that this is a better way to go. Anyway, I'm getting carried. It's exciting.
Can you talk a little bit more about UNDP and the Blockchain Academy?
Yeah.
I think there was a big new step that we stepped, right? I think we did a pilot project early this year, and now it's rolling out. Is that right?
Yeah, now it's rolling out. We put together, it's called the Algorand Blockchain Academy. My awesome colleague, Doro Unger Lee, who spearheaded that and just done amazing work, has put together an academy, a training session for the United Nations Development Program, which is kind of the world's biggest, I think, UN agency. And so we're going to eventually reach roughly 25,000 UN employees, teaching them about blockchain technology. And we have examples from supply chain, from payments from the SABPay, from carbon credits, from everything you can name. These folks are teaching UN staff the benefits of blockchain. And what that's going to do is it's going to educate a whole generation of UN staff around the world. Some of these folks are going to take it and say, we can do that here. And they've learned about it on the Algorand Blockchain Academy. And they're going to begin to implement programs, pilots at first, but I think getting to scale over time in their own countries. We've already had queries from around the world about how they can, people can get more involved and how people can do this. So I think it's a pretty good tactic. And again, sets us apart really as a leader in the field.
I think what's really cool about that from my perspective is like a lot of these kind of international kind of development projects, they have to kind of grow from like local needs, right? Yeah. And so it's very hard to say like, okay, we're going to just deploy blockchain everywhere. Like we wouldn't know how to do that. You need the specialists in a country that understand the local situation and that need to be able to kind of make the connection between local issues and then what the technology can offer, right? And I think that's the interesting piece here in my view as well. Is like
you do, because that's so that local staff, and it's exactly how it works. Country offices identify a need and they work with governments in trying to solve that, right? Solve that challenge. And so local UN staff then understands the technology, or at least enough to go to the local government and say, hey, here's that problem in payments, or in, you've been searching for an identity solution for years to get people the identity they need to access basic services. This is what I just learned. And so that government is then brought in. And so you've got this partnership between local UN staff and government officials that will undoubtedly lead to something that is blockchain based when it comes to identity, when it comes to payments, when it comes to tracking and tracing of carbon credits, when it could come to maybe a transformation in how supply chains are managed within the UN built on blockchain. So the long-term effects of this, I think, are going to be profound.
Matt, I was lucky enough to be part of that beta program that Doral ran with the UNDP, and I sat in, I think, on one of the final presentations of some of the participants who then pitched their ideas that they were building after having learned all about Algorand, and it was just such a beautiful, like, wide range of projects where there's like local artisans trying to find a marketplace, kind of like you said, just knowing that local market. I was going to ask you, what are you most excited about in terms of just like the way that these different types of organizations and local communities can build on the blockchain? Are there certain areas that you're super pumped about as far as impact goes?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few. I think supply chain is a big deal, particularly in that world. I think that could be blockchain is there's no just across the board in supply chain, it's gonna change the way supply chain is done. There's just no question. I was talking with they're not UN related, but Whole Chain today, and
Uh-huh.
they are working on. And I always ask, like, you know, blockchain offers transparency, immutability, traceability, but at that genesis point where the grower says that this is organic and is it what he purports to say that it is? How do you prove that, right? And how do you make that so that it is the truth that goes on, right, on the chain? And so they're doing a project where, using kind of IoT and, farmers themselves carrying phones to validate and to prove at that point of growth that this is in fact what it is, right? So stuff like that is super interesting to me because the effects all up and down the chain are profound. That's one. Two, again, I keep coming back to payments because I think receiving that assistance, and again, these are people who, are truly the most marginalized on earth. If you're receiving assistance from the United Nations in Syria or in Afghanistan or in Sudan, you're at the end, right? This is as bad as it gets. The ability to receive that in a way that allows you to spend it on the things you think are important, to me, just kind of checks all the boxes, right? It checks agency, it checks dignity, it checks efficiency, it checks transparency, it checks anti-corruption, all these things. So that's another thing. And then third thing, I talked about this a lot with you guys, is identification. And we have folks on the Algorand staff, or our colleague Bruno, who is a passionate advocate for decentralized identity. And it's exciting to me because it's foundational. Without it, you really can't affect change at scale, but with it, you can. And we're at the early days of that. And again, I think this is one of the places where we're taking a leadership role in coming up with the solutions for decentralized identity and also advocating it, also implementing it in projects like the Care Wallet, for example, in the United States. So these are the things that are going to change the lives of people for the better.
So talk to us about the Care Wallet. What is the Care Wallet?
So the Care Wallet is, we invested in a company called ATEC a couple of years ago for specifically for disaster relief in the United States. And so if you look at how disaster relief is done in the US, and it's hard to even imagine that disaster hits and you're filling out paper forms, you're making phone calls, FEMA or whatever agency that is going to respond with aid then puts all this stuff into a spreadsheet and a database, and it takes months and months and months and months to get the relief that you need if your house has been affected by a hurricane, it's been burned down in a fire. All the things that are happening with greater velocity and happening more often, for sure. And it's roughly the same parts of the country that are hit over and over again. And this is true across the world. In the United States, it's Florida, it's Mississippi, it's California, it's the Southeast. And so these folks are continually being, getting ready for disaster and then responding to disaster, right? Same in India. We had a panel at the Impact Summit last year with a company called Celestial Earth, which works with the Indian government on disaster response. And it's the same story. It's slow, it's inefficient, It's paper-based. And so we developed this wallet where survivors can download the app called the Care Wallet, and they can then apply for aid from various agencies that are part of the Care Wallet. So we have two partner agencies that we've been working with, the St. Vincent de Paul Society and an umbrella group called NVOAD, which stands for National Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster Relief. And central to that is this DID algo, a decentralized identity that forms when that wallet is downloaded and the requisite information is uploaded. It's approved by the agencies, and the survivor gets relief within 24 hours of that application approval, which is pretty stunning. So we just finished a pilot in Mississippi and in Florida with, I think, 500 families, and we kind of finished it last week, and we'll be kind of putting this out on social media very shortly. And the feedback has been tremendous. We had Walmart gift cards, $100 gift cards that went out to these families. And, they take the $100 and they go and they buy what they need at Walmart. And it could be diapers, it could be formula, it could be clothes, it could be food, it could be whatever it is. And that's been a long time coming, and it's pretty cool. I mean, it was a lot of work. Thanks to both ATEC and Algorand and our partners on the ground. So our job in 2025 is to take what we've done and what we've proven and to disseminate that more broadly across the U.S. disaster landscape.
So I read somewhere that the benefit is not only for the disaster survivors, but that even the employees of these relief agencies, these agencies used to send people to the Walmart to kind of like buy a stack of 100 gift cards that they could then distribute, right? Is that?
Yeah. They would go stand in line. In fact, I went to this conference last year. I was talking to this guy from Islamic Relief who said that after it was a fire somewhere, it might have been California, where he had a backpack, he had $75,000 worth of gift cards. He and a colleague in 2 backpacks.
It's crazy, right?
This is not that long. This is last year. He was referring to a year before. So it was 2 years ago.
Crazy.
So, I mean, think about if you're a disaster relief worker, you're a case manager, you're running a local branch of the Red Cross, and somebody comes up to you and says, I've got this wallet and here's what it does. And here's kind of a short tutorial on it. It's hard for me to believe that 100% of the people wouldn't jump at that. As you said, Marc, just to make their own lives easier and more efficient and less duplicative of the applications they get for assistance.
Yeah. So now maybe let's switch to a completely different and similar use case, but different country. Like there's a lot of work happening in Nigeria as well, right, Matt? And some of it is decentralized identity based, but some of it is also based on like attracting developers and talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Nigeria, there are two countries in the world that have the highest use of cryptocurrency are India and Nigeria. So we've established this incredible organization, Algorand in India, led by our colleague Neil Kakani, who has put together something. I just came back from the India Impact Summit, which was a fantastic 2-day event. I got to say, that's something you'll talk to Neil about, but I'll let him. I'm not going to steal his thunder, but it was inspirational. So
just so you know, like next episode will be all about India. So we'll get him here, and then we'll talk at length about.
All right,
India.
good. You could take a whole episode on that. So what they've done on the developer and startup side is something that we're going to try to replicate in Nigeria. So we want to attract developers, and there are a million developers in Nigeria and a million potential developers on Algorand in Nigeria. You've got a demographic that skews incredibly young. I think the median age in Nigeria might be 18. So if you think demography is destiny, then you look at Nigeria and you look at that genius that's coming out of universities and the desire to be part of something and to build and to experiment and to become entrepreneurs. All that foundation is there. It's there waiting to be tapped into. So we want to attract developers, and equally as important, we want some of those developers to go on and to become entrepreneurs building on Algorand, right? So where are the folks that are going to say, I can start something, I can build this on Algorand, and I'm going to get the support I need as I go through that journey, just like the entrepreneurs in India get the support they need through the partnership with T-Hub that our team has put together. So we're, I mean, the potential there is huge. I'm excited about that. Our colleague Ben is leading that effort on the ground in Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria. And the second piece of that is they've signed MOUs with two states in Nigeria, Plateau State and Taraba State. And the thing that they want most is that decentralized identity piece. So we're going to be looking at, okay, what's out there already? How do we use DID algo as part of that? What can we build on in terms of that? And what are the existing solutions within our own ecosystem, but also elsewhere to put together a decentralized identity that meets the needs of those two states? So those are our two primary goals over the next year.
What I like about that too is that, I mean, people think about international development and impact, and they think about like humanitarian aid and cash assistance, but like providing job opportunities and finding ways for people to kind of like become entrepreneurs and kind of start their own businesses and be successful at this on a blockchain that's inherently permissionless, so anybody can just go start a business and do something. That to me is very inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. And like when you travel around and you meet kids, I remember leading the X Prize in Tanzania. You meet a CS class at the University of Dar es Salaam, or you meet a CS class at Tufts, or you meet a CS class, at Trinity College in Dublin. All these kids are the same. They all speak the same language. They're all eager. They're all excited. They're all smart. They all want to be part of something, larger than their own self-interest, right? And they want to start businesses. They're young. They're passionate. They've got that quality of imagination that can carry them through. They've got that courage to do that. And so that's the chance, I think, that we provide, the opportunity that we provide, which again is exciting and, as you said, Marc, impactful.
Yeah. So as maybe start to wrap up kind of this episode on impact, what looking forward to like 2025, what are you most excited about, and what is the kind of the world of impact going to look like, let's say in a year from now, by the end of 2025 on Algorand?
So we built the foundation over the past 18 months, and we laid the foundation and we're gonna start building on that foundation. So what we are most excited about is getting to some kind of scale on the humanitarian payments front, which means another country coming online, and I think it's going to be Syria, where we've got some really interesting stuff happening. I think we're going to get to scale in Afghanistan. My guess is that within a month, Afghanistan will represent the world's largest humanitarian cash assistance program on blockchain, biggest in the world. That's my guess, early 25. So that's number one. Number two is that getting to scale on the identity piece, taking what we've already done, building on that, looking to our ecosystem partners to help us around the world. So those two things, I'm really excited to see what Whole Chain does. These are some of the other things that are kind of not in our core mission, but that we support and help. But getting those two to scale in 25 is going to be a focus that will be laser-like. And I think we're going to see some good things, I hope.
Well, that's
So
super
exciting.
Super exciting. Okay. Well, Matt, thanks so much. Thanks so much for talking us through all the initiatives. I'm sure we'll get you back onto the show very quickly to kind of check on the progress and make sure you've delivered on everything that you said you were going to deliver.
Okay. Will do.
In early 2025. But yes, thanks for coming by. So now let's switch to the next topic. And of course, the man you've been waiting for, our ecosystem correspondent, Fred Estante.
Hey, Marc, man, John, it's good to be back. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. I'm always so excited to come here to the show and share the news. But today, even more so, right? Because I just had front row seat to this incredible TED Talk by the one and only Mr. Matt Keller, talking about the incredible work his team is doing here in the foundation. It's always so inspiring, Matt. You should come back more often, my friend.
So, Fred, what's been happening in the ecosystem?
All right, Marc, a lot of stuff happening in the ecosystem as always, and it's crazy to see because staking rewards are just around the corner. The ecosystem is going crazy. So many amazing solutions coming, all over the ecosystem in all the different verticals. So yeah, a lot of stuff happening. I I was compiling my notes a couple days ago, and I figured out, hey, there's so much happening that I'm actually only going to cover news from the last week alone, and that's already a lot of stuff. So let's jump right in, okay? So today we're going to start talking about DeFi and the latest happenings in the DeFi vertical. So Folks Finance just announced that they're open sourcing and decentralizing the Algo LST. So that's pretty cool stuff because they're running basically a unified bounty to audit, to let the community devs audit their LST smart contract. So to all of you algo devs out there, make sure to check out their bounty, look at their code, and help them make it even more secure. Really cool stuff. And as I mentioned, they're also decentralizing the stake running on consensus for the LST. So that's going to be super exciting as well. But still on the LST topic, Tinyman just launched their T-Algo LST and also the ST-Algo LST, which is basically a restaking LST that's available only for the Tinyman governors. So really cool stuff. And talking about that, the Tinyman governance is growing so much recently, and they just reached the milestone of 2,500 locked governors. That is really, really incredible work that the Tinyman team has been doing. But definitely not far behind is Compex. They are plugging in a lot of interesting launches and updates and news over the last few weeks. And just in the last few days, they released a whole new set of interest rates for their stablecoin XUSD, making it more dynamic, letting the market respond to it more quickly. And they're also, working across the board. They have launched several new CDPs for different tokens and ASAs in our ecosystem, and now they're fully tracked on DeFi Llama. So DeFi Llama is now covering the TVLs from all the different products. Everything's good to go, and that has been contributing also, of course, to the growth of TVL in Algorand as a whole. But moving on a little bit to the real world asset vertical, which is one that I know the Algo fam loves a lot, and all of us do, right? Tokenox, an Italy-based tokenization platform, which is a spin-off from Blockchain Italia, the same home as Folks Finance, they just pitched at the demo day of the Global Startup Program 2024 in Paris. More news on that coming up very soon in their socials. Stay tuned. Lofty AI, of course, always lofty, continues to list stunning properties all over the United States, and they also continue to drop lots of new liquidity pools against some of these properties. So basically bringing the DeFi world to the real estate world. Incredible work the team is doing over there. But moving away a little bit from the United States and moving here to South America, Coinbase, our partner here in Argentina, just announced a new crypto wallet with a company, an insurance company called Rio Uruguay Seguros, which is basically allows the minting of the RUS token that's going to be used by all of their users as either a loyalty point system or for payments of their bills and the bills with the RUS. So that's really cool stuff. And also for the Algo fam here in Latin America, because I know there's a lot of people that live here, Coinbase is hiring in their offices in Argentina and in Colombia. So stay tuned. Lots of positions open, all right? Check their socials. And the last, but certainly not least, in the RWA vertical, A-Note Music continues to tokenize music catalogs and, more importantly, deliver lots of royalty payouts on all of those music catalogs that they have listed on the website and that people own a share of. But moving on towards NFTs and gaming, also lots of happening in this vertical in the last few days, and it's all about prizes. So if you check out the Astro Explorer Arcade, they have lots of NFTs, ASAs, and tokens up for grabs as prizes to their arcade games, which are super fun. So I highly recommend everybody check out Astro Explorer. You're going to have a blast and win lots of prizes and NFTs, okay? And then very similar front, Fractal Monsters also partnered with Realms, and they're also distributing incredible prizes across their game. So really fun stuff happening over there. And then to wrap up today, of course, we're going to talk about infra, tools, and platforms, right? So the Para Wallet has just launched the Asset Inbox. So, to the all OG Algo fans, out there, no more opt-ins, okay? You can just send your favorite tokens, your favorite assets, NFTs, whatever it is, to your friends very easily, painless, everybody's happy, and it's super quick, right? So make sure to check the Asset Inbox on Para Wallet live now. And for all the geeks out there in the community, which we know there are quite a few that run their own nodes, Nodally just launched a node telemetry dashboard that basically allows you to better monitor the health of your node. So, staking rewards just around the corner, lots of new nodes coming up. make sure that that your node is operating and you're actually contributing to the network in a healthy way by using Nodally's health telemetry dashboard, okay, and contribute to the general statistics and monitoring of the network. Going back to the wallets, the DeFi wallet just announced the integration, and now they support the Ledger, Flex, and Stacks. So even more possibilities for their users to continue using DeFi wallet. And at last here today, but certainly not least, a project that I've been following from the very beginning of Algorand because they provide a very good public service to the Algo fam, which is ASA Stats. And they just released the V2 of their API with lots of updates for filtering, performance upgrades, and many other ways that you can better interact with the whole API ecosystem. They launched a great blog post. It's right in their socials. Just go there and look for all of you Algo devs out there, how you can implement and leverage the V2 of their API. And that is about it. I hope I stayed within my time today, given that Marc again did not give me 25 hours as I asked. But that's all I have for today, team.
Fred, you always get all the time you need. This is super, super cool. So thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So guys, what do you think? That was a pretty good episode, I think. No?
Yeah, it's really impressive. Sometimes when you're on the tech side, you're building some of this stuff in an abstract way. You're thinking, how can I write a language or build a language that allows anyone to kind of express anything, or okay, well, let's create all the fundamentals we need to create identity. But you don't think, well, I didn't think that it was being used in so many impactful ways. I mean, it becomes maybe even more important, when you hear that some of these some of these technologies are really changing people's lives, not just so that they can have fun with it or make money or start businesses or cool economies, but like maybe that they needed to actually eat, rather than waiting, or actually get access to shelter. And so it changes how I really feel about it listening to Matt, really, to be quite honest.
Yeah. You always talk about real world use cases and real world solutions because that's what makes, everyday normal person understand the value of blockchain. I feel like this adds another layer on top of that, which is when you hear about these projects building in the humanitarian aid or payments or whole chain, et cetera, there's like a level of it's profound emotions actually that also gets that I find myself like, wow, just it's not just understanding the use cases and that it resonates. It's just like, wow, we're making a real impact, and it's powerful. I think it's so powerful to hear them. And
let's take advantage of this by doing another call out to our Can a Blockchain Do That website, where you can find more information about this company and the Care Wallet and all the projects that Matt talked about today on the show.
And watch the videos, right? And the videos, which are beautiful and and really do tell a beautiful story, Marc, as well.
Yes. And so we'll keep on the theme of like real world impact with the next episode, where we're going to have Anil talk about India and all the tremendous amount of activity that's happening in India. That's going to be exciting too.
Yeah. And I'll just give a tiny little teaser, of course, and give Anil the floor when he joins us for our next episode. But as Matt mentioned, they just came back from the India Summit, which took place over the weekend. They brought in projects. They brought in big enterprise partners. They brought in, startup T-Hub founders, et cetera. There's so much happening there. And John, you're going to appreciate this because I think they're going to touch a little bit of everything that you talked about, the tech, the students, but the projects and, all the stuff that we're doing on the ground. So I'm super excited to get Anil on the show and talk about all the stuff that the team's been doing there as well.
Yeah, it seemed super. It was really, really like the pictures that I've seen and the videos I've seen really vibrant. So good to see.
One thing that, Matt kind of hinted to this, but what's really exciting about both India and Nigeria is just the energy. And I think we don't feel it from here because we're sitting, I'm in California, you're in Ireland, Marc's in California. But when you're on the ground in Nigeria and you see all those young kids just excited, hacking away, downloading AlgoKit, I think it's like a whole different vibe. And it's one of those things where you have to really experience it to, I think, appreciate it. So we'll try to experience secondhand. from them.
Wonderful.
Well, maybe let's on that note, let's wrap it up. And thank you guys for being in the show. And I can't wait to do the next one with you guys.
Yeah.
You too.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys.